One of Scotts Pro Vista's selling points with their grass is the ability to use glyphosate to control any weeds in your lawn. What's going on, everybody? I'm Jake the Lawn Kid. Welcome back to yet another video. Hope all of you guys are having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're at. Guys, if you're watching this in the morning, you know the drill. Make sure you got a nice cup of black to go with it. Cheers, guys. Today, we got a fun video, guys. We're actually going to be doing an update on some of the Pro Vista projects we've been doing. For those of you who don't know, I partnered with Scotts Pro Vista about a year ago. In that time, we have started 2 projects that are actually in progress right now. One here at JTLK headquarters, which is where we dropped sod about a year ago, and then another one being a complete new lawn install with the Scotts Pro Vista seed that we dropped back in May. We still have quite a bit of work to do, so stay tuned and subscribe to see those videos coming up. Aside from updating everything and showing you guys the status of where things are at, I wanted to touch on the third pillar of the Scotts Pro Vista that makes it unbeatable, the weed control segment. One of Scotts Pro Vista's selling points with their grass that is very, very interesting to a lot of us is the ability to use glyphosate to control any weeds in your lawn. Now, for those of you who don't know, glyphosate is a non-selective herbicide that will kill anything green. Now, there are a couple of things to be mindful of. Even though Scotts Pro Vista Kentucky Bluegrass is resilient to glyphosate when you apply it, that doesn't necessarily mean that this grass is completely untouchable by any other selective herbicide on the market. You need to be very careful and make sure that you stay within the labeled rates, because you can do some damage to this grass if the herbicide is not labeled for it. So you need to be careful. The first thing I want to start off with is the sod that we installed here last year at JTLK HQ. If you haven't seen the full video talking all about that and some crucial steps to ensure you have massive success with your sod, I recommend you check that out. I will leave it linked up here and down below as well. It's a great video to check out when doing a sod install. One thing we did to wake it up in the spring, we started off with a brand new product from our good friends over at Green County Fertilizer, just made available to the DIY market this year, 2600 Green Charge product. We applied that at 16 ounces per thousand to hit the ground running, which gave us just a little over a third pound to end. Woke up things really nice within a matter of a couple of weeks. 4 weeks later, we came in with some 1801 at 16 ounces per thousand. That's another quarter pound of nitrogen just to keep things moving through the spring. And then to follow up 4 weeks later, we did come in with another 2600 application at the end of May at 20 ounces per thousand, giving us just under a half pound of nitrogen, 0.43 pounds N to be exact. And then to follow up with that, 2 more applications of 1801 spaced apart at 4 weeks, one at 16 ounces per thousand, bringing another quarter pound of nitrogen, and another one at 24 ounces, giving us just a little over a third pound of nitrogen, giving us a grand total of 1.5 pounds of N so far this season, and things are looking really good. Now, they didn't look all that great in the process of this, guys. I actually did make a little mistake with the mowing side of things, and because of that, I did suffer and pay for it. At the end of May, when I did that application of 2600 at 20. A week later, when things were starting to go downhill, I thought maybe it was my fault with cutting the grass too low, maybe applying too much of the 2600, but it turns out it was neither of the above, and it wasn't even my fault with any of those things. All it was simply mowing too high. You see, one of the things with Pro Vista that's very, very interesting when you compare it to other grass types, because it is such a slow grower and it doesn't get as tall, if you will, as your other conventional grass types, one of the things that will happen after the seed stalks come up, the seed stalks, when they come in, they actually sit much lower in the turf canopy, so to speak. And one of the things that could happen when those seed heads start to die off and you're not mowing low enough is it can give your lawn this brownish cast like shown in this picture here. I was actually informed that by a PhD at Pro Vista. They told me, you know, Jake, you really should have scalped that down in the spring. That would have saved you, but it's not too late. Get it done. You should be fine. I did that. Again, did look brown for a little bit because I did scalp it down to nothing, but within a matter of a couple of weeks and just fertilizing it regularly with those last 2 redemption apps I've done so far, the 1801, things came in really nice, and I gotta say, say we're on the path to success right now with a super green, thick, lush stand of Scott's Pro Vista at JTLK HQ. Now, as far as the grass goes for our project, guys, all we've really done so far was lay the groundwork with that first application of 1621-2, as well as some RGS. The rates for that, again, were 15 ounces per thousand of the green pop, 3 ounces per thousand of the RGS. That was a great thing to do to lay the groundwork and get things going. And ever since then, I've just been on weed patrol, which again, we're going to talk about in this video with the glyphosate, as I did make a mistake and not include a seed-friendly pre-emergence such as Metso 4C Select. I did suffer for it, had a lot of weed competition coming up that I did have to combat and control with the glyphosate, which we will be talking about very shortly. We do have some corrective work that needs to be done, I will admit that, but those are future videos that will come. Yes, guys, Scott's Pro Vista is glyphosate tolerant, but only to a certain extent. You really do need to be careful. You don't want to go too heavy because you can risk doing some damage. So stay within the labeled rates of what Scott's Pro Vista themselves recommends, especially if you're doing blanket apps. You can go a little bit higher if you're doing spot spray applications, but if you're doing a blanket app like we have had to do quite a few times for reasons I will state in a second, you do want to stay within the labeled rates of what they do recommend. Now, with that being said, I just want to go ahead and preface once more that because Scott's Pro Vista is glyphosate tolerant, that doesn't necessarily mean that this grass is tolerant to every herbicide on the market, especially non-selective herbicides, just glyphosate and glyphosate alone. So that does mean that if you are using a selective herbicide, you need to be careful. You need to make sure that Kentucky bluegrass is on that label. Otherwise, you will do some damage. Again, label is the law and make sure you follow it. And when it comes to non-selective herbicides, it is glyphosate tolerant and glyphosate tolerant only. So if you're using something that doesn't have glyphosate in it, but another alternative to glyphosate, if you will, you are going to do some damages. So make sure that whatever you're getting that is non-selective is glyphosate. Let me show you a good example of that. So what I have here on the screen are two products, one of which that I am using, the Compare and Save from Tractor Supply, and then another one that I actually found at a regional store here, Northern Tool, called X Out. The two look very similar, but when you look deeper into the label, you can see one is ideal and the other is not. So X Out Weed and Grass Killer, this product does seem like a glyphosate type product, but when we look deeper into the label, you can see we actually have a different active ingredient that looks similar to glyphosate, but it's not glyphosate. As you can see, if we were to spray that on the Pro Vista, that would do some damage very, very quickly. So we want to stay away from that. Whereas the Compare and Save, on the other hand, we look at the active ingredient, you can see that we do have glyphosate in there at 41%. We're good with this product because it contains the active ingredient that the Pro Vista is tolerant to. I know that was a mouthful, but it's something you need to be very careful with, otherwise you will do some damage. So make sure that you read those labels. Label is law. Make sure you have the correct active ingredient, which is glyphosate, and you will be good to go. When you are doing a complete new lawn seeding with the Scott's Pro Vista, a couple of weeks after seeding, when you see the seedlings popping up, the Pro Vista is glyphosate tolerant at those early seedling stages. However, you do not want to go any higher than 32 ounces to the acre, or if you're doing a smaller area, 0.73 ounces per 1,000 square feet. That's the equivalent to 32 ounces to the acre. As long as you stay within that realm and you have no overlap during your application, you will be fine. Now, I will say this, if you're doing bare dirt and those weeds are popping up intermittently everywhere, I recommend you do what I did and do a blanket application, again, at that 32 ounces to the acre rate, and you will be fine. Now, as far as means go to application, if you're doing a big area, I do recommend looking into something bigger than a backpack sprayer. I recommend investing in a bigger tank, kind of like I did here, my little DIY tank that I actually made myself. I'm pretty proud of that. This tank worked out really, really well in just getting the application across smoothly, as I had more than a 5-gallon tank that I would have had to refill 3 times. Now, as far as the sod goes, the application rate is going to be the same. However, I do recommend you wait a little bit longer, about 9 months is what I would say, because in that time, your sod root system is developing, and on top of that, the weeds that you have to fight are actually making themselves apparent, which in turn will make that first application much more effective, which means you won't have to reapply reapply it. Now, it probably goes without saying, but when you are doing these applications, whether it is to the seed or to the sod, it is a great idea to calibrate beforehand and make sure that you are spraying out the right amount over an area. I like to keep it at about 1 gallon per 1,000 square feet is what I like my calibration to be. This will ensure that when you walk the area and do a blanket application to the Pro Vista, that you do get the weeds wet. That's the idea. You want to spray the weeds until they're wet so that you get an effective control so that you don't have to reapply as often. Ideally, you want to keep it to about 2 to 3 applications a year, spaced apart by every couple months or so. About 12 to 14 days, you'll start to see results, as glyphosate is a systemic herbicide, which means it will take its time to work its way through the plant and do its magic. Scott's Pro Vista, thank you for partnering with me on this. I really do look forward to making more videos as we continue to spread awareness on new cool things that are going on. Thank you for that. I sincerely appreciate it. With that, I'm Jake the Lawn Kid. Thank you for watching. Much more to come on this, guys. I got to get on with things, as I'm sure we all do too. We have to keep our lawns looking deep, dark, green, and thick. So I'll get on with that. Hope you guys will too. I'll see you in the next video. Later.